Welcome to Sitting with Sallie. I have today with me Laurie Scott, who is a member of Provincial Parliament from Central Ontario. She is the conservative critic on women's issues and is up in Kenora, interested in human trafficking. Welcome to Sitting with Sallie.
Thank you so much, Sallie, for inviting me.
My pleasure. It was a quick getting it together. I'm very interested in what is human trafficking, because I think a lot of people don't know.
And you're so right. Human trafficking, what does that mean to the average person on the street? But it's the luring, manipulation, and coercion of people into forced labor. But what I concentrated on is into forced sexual exploitation. And they lure predominantly young girls. Average age is 14 years old, so there are children. And the staggering statistic that most people hear and say that can't be true is that over 90% are Canadian born. So it is predominantly young girls, and they are lured into this trade. Usually it's the, Romeo pimp, the guy that's going to make their life better, and he's usually older, and he coerces them and manipulates them to this life of sexual exploitation without them really realizing that that's occurring. He grooms them after a while. And so as he grooms them, and I'm going to make your life better, but maybe just, can you help me out for a bit, make some extra money? Could you start turning, tricks? I've got some friends. And these girls are, trapped within a week or two.
And you had mentioned before we went on air, but it's the largest growing crime, not only internationally and in Canada, but in Ontario too.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the largest growing crimes in Ontario and in Canada, and nationally it is the largest, and globally it is the largest growing crime.
And being in Kenora, we are part of the conduit from Thunder Bay to Winnipeg.
Absolutely.
Winnipeg, there's a big concern about it.
Yes, and so there's certainly vulnerable sectors of society. It can happen in any middle-class household, but there's a vulnerable sector of society that we need to protect. Aboriginal youth are certainly one of them. Homeless youth are one. And wherever you have a large highway, say the Trans-Canada Highway that goes through Kenora, you can bet, and the police have told me, they'll pull over a car for speeding or something, and the gentleman doesn't look like he's, really that up and up, but there's a girl maybe in the back seat, and she doesn't happen to have ID. She looks petrified. She doesn't say much. He becomes suspicious, the police officer, he or she becomes suspicious, but they don't really know what to do. And that is what I've been mandated in my own mind anyway, what I need to do is we've asked for this coordinated task force in Ontario. So the police talk to each other and say, that girl had a blue tattoo and she was seen going through Kenora. But the Ottawa police said they saw her 2 weeks ago, because what these traffickers or these pimps do is they move the girls from community to community, and that's part of isolating them so that they are taken away from whether their family or their friends or just an environment they knew. And they keep isolating them and moving them along and selling them to each other.
And no one becomes familiar with them. So,
no. And so we need the coordinated task force of dedicated police officers. Not every police officer is trained. I would love to see that mandatory in Ontario. Trained on what to look for, what the operation of the traffickers or the pimps usually are. Dedicated police officers, crown attorneys, and judges. Because if we can rescue more of these girls from this heinous crime that not very many people know exist, we can start to put a shingle out in our province that our girls are not for sale, that we're clamping down. And because of the human post-traumatic distress that these girls are in, there really has to be training on the sensitivity if we can even get them, rescue them. The court process is very, very difficult, so there has to be sensitivity.
So
training.
When these young girls, if they go missing from a home or community,
yes.
and they are reported missing, is there an extra step that if a police suspect that they're missing but maybe are being trafficked, they then go on a different list?
Yes, so You know, there are, for example, very different IT established systems within the police services. We'd like to see human traffic added to that, emboldened to that, and the police would like to see it. So when I say a coordinated approach, what we see and what we were beginning to see in Kenora is a great group of community frontline people that have come together to say we need to do something, and they're voluntarily getting together and sharing information. But you need the provincial government, the Wind government, to see how large a crime this is, and to give the resources or shift the resources to the right spots to make this a coordinated effort. And it's been done in other jurisdictions. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So if they see a young girl and they can even get her to come out to phone them, to come out for just an hour or two, and she feels there's enough services that she would be comfortable enough in leaving, there would be enough commitment to help her, that'll make a big difference, and that'll spread throughout this community.
And you introduced some legislation called Saving the Girl Next Door?
Right, so I did. I'm gonna hold up this sign.
Please do.
Hashtag Saving the Girl Next Door. We title this specifically because we want to make people aware that it's coming from all our small towns, our communities. The internet has changed the world. These girls may go on Facebook and say, I'm having a bad day. We have traffickers and pimps watching the Facebook constantly. She goes to a party in, in Kenora or in Thunder Bay or Toronto, and they're kind of at that bus station and befriending them and starting to groom them and making friends. And then over a quick period of time, that girl is caught into what they call the game. And she can't escape without our help. And that is, I brought pieces of legislation within that title of that bill to try and give the police more tools, even the family more tools, to say a protection order is issued. So a family member can actually go and say, my daughter, I want to protect her from this known trafficker that she's with. And they can remove her from that situation and put tough penalties. So it's like a restraining order. Put tough penalties against him if he breaks that order and coming close to her again.
That must be a lot of the fear from some of the young women, that even if they do leave, he's going to come after them.
Of course, because it's one of the most lucrative kind. It's more lucrative than guns and drugs and gangs. It is more lucrative. They have, the average girl makes about $250,000 for an pimp a year. And so you bet that's a very valuable commodity to that pimp, and he's going to come after them. I say he, but there are certainly female traffickers that are out there, which is becoming more of a problem because, of course, young girls would feel more comfortable sometimes with an older...
More inclined to trust.
And more inclined to trust.
Okay.
That lady that's invited them to the party in which they will either be drugged, compromising pictures taken of them, their identification taken from them, and then they're held hostage. And they're quite often addicted to drugs. Then they become, some people, they reach out to people in communities, so the police may not realize that they're not there against their, not consented to be there. And they don't, they see them maybe as addicted to drugs, maybe they consider them prostitutes. When in actual fact, there's been a great story of a girl in Ottawa who comes forward. She was recruited when she was 20, and she said she encountered the police, she encountered addictions, she tried to commit suicide, she encountered the medical system, and no one helped her because no one realized what was happening.
No one wanted to look at the story behind what she was presenting.
And this is where our education has to come forward, and community like you're doing today. The community has to become aware. And so it is nurses, it is teachers, it is by law enforcement officers, it's as well as police, as well as victim services. There's a lot of points of entry in a community that they could see a young girl in trouble and they could help them.
I suppose the education is everyone who comes in contact with a young person has an opportunity to save that person.
Absolutely.
Or help them get out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to talk a bit about the task force that you went to in Kenora, and you had earlier mentioned a speaker there.
Yes.
We'll be right back. Please join us in a few minutes. Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. I have Laurie Scott with me, who's been talking about human trafficking, especially of young women and young girls. And you attended the Coalition Task Force meeting in Kenora.
Yes.
You got to listen to Dr. Jackie Linder, who has the Chrysalis program.
Correct. And she's from Alberta and has been working on the human trafficking file for over 10 years. And of course, with the stories that I mentioned earlier, you can only imagine how difficult it is for people that work and want to help in this horrible crime to see this evil that occurs. You have to be a very strong individual. And as she said, people have come and gone. There's a high burnout in not only police officers, but victim services. And you have to be out there with the intention that it's an evil in the world and you're helping to try and combat it and save whatever individual soul you can every day. And I think that good people have to come forward. And whether you're in government or not, you can't wait for governments to come to the table.
That's often
Community
true.
actions have to take place. And I commend the Kenora Roundtable to combat human trafficking that has started up just in December, because it's good people that came together to say we have to do more in our communities. And we heard Dr. Lindor speak to us yesterday, and it's kind of overwhelming when someone's been in it for 10 years and you have a group of people around the table that are just starting up, because she's
miles ahead.
She's miles ahead, and she told some pretty stark stories. And we have to change our mentality in a lot of ways, especially in our justice system and how to handle these young victims. So Jackie came forward with the Chrysalis program, which is a hotline she developed to receive calls from anything that is a person that is trafficked or is forced into prostitution, a person that, even it's supports for family members that think there's something wrong. And she formed that because there was a group of police officers that were basically so overwhelmed with the survivors that were trying to escape and the time commitment that it takes to stay with these individuals, because it's a lot, and it's a hyper attachment, they call it. And so she formed this coalition of people, volunteers that are trained with mental health backgrounds, mental health worker backgrounds, and it's run by volunteers with the qualifications, and they help relieve the stress that are on the police services when they rescue these victims.
Because someone can call anytime, 24
Someone can
hours.
call every time. And there's a brochure that the coalition Kenora here is putting together, and an advertisement campaign to help young people, identify the fact that, wait a minute, I am here against my will. I am a trafficked person, and these people are here to help me get out.
In Winnipeg, Diane Red Sky with the Mama We Center has been doing some work, interesting work.
Diane Red Sky has been a phenomenal advocate against human trafficking in especially the Aboriginal community. And I'll say that CNN is doing a series about that right now this week, about the human trafficking of Aboriginal people in Manitoba. And when I was there 2 days ago now, they had a wonderful program that they developed for when the Grey Cup was there. And they had the partnership of taxi cabs, Uber cabs that had stickers and said, "Sex is not a sport." They had the Winnipeg Blue Bombers do commercials on TV. This is like, something I'm like, why are we not doing this across the country? And I'll hold up a couple posters that they developed and put everywhere. They put it, in the bus shelters. They put it in any public transportation. I am not for sale. The community partnership, encouraging changes for sexually exploited children, youth, females, and males of all ages. They had buying sex is not a sport. I think that's very important, impactful statements. And it's against the law to buy sex in Canada. So obviously targeting...
And in several languages, too.
Several languages, absolutely. And they definitely, Winnipeg has been, Manitoba itself as a province, has been miles ahead of the rest of the country in advancing the laws. Child protection up to 18. We in Ontario just are protecting children till they're 16, just till they're 15. Once they turn 16, there is not child protection laws for them. So you see a great demand in 16 and 17-year-olds that are still children, that unless they willingly leave, the police, the parents, no one has a tool to help them and to protect them. And that is part of Saving the Girl Next Door, has taken the ideas that have been effective in Manitoba, and we've tried to put them into laws in Canada. We were cited by the U.S. Department Against Human Trafficking, Ontario, as not fulfilling protection for 16 and 17-year-olds, that there was more, we're actually leaving them liable to be trafficked because we don't provide the protections, and they just maybe can go into some group homes. And I found that, just like when I came to Kenora yesterday, I'm a bit of a conduit of best practices in other parts of Ontario. It should not be that way. It should not be some piecemeal patchwork, no one talking to each other. This is where the government has a role to spearhead the best practices, spearhead the victim services, and definitely the justice system to address one of the largest growing crime that involve our children. Our children, over 90% are Canadian born. How
does someone who might be interested in doing something but knows nothing about it find out more information?
There's certainly your Kenora, the Coalition Against Human Trafficking. It's a great roundtable. So victim services, your local victim services, your local assault centers, which I had the privilege of going down and touring yesterday also. There's a great deal of coordination now within the Kenora region, and you'll see when this does come out, this brochure that they're to say to get involved, to be a volunteer, what our mandate is. They give you phone numbers. Chrysalis is a phone number for a hotline. So if it's a young victim, or if it's someone that sees possibly a victim, you can phone the Chrysalis line. You have Crime Stoppers here. You have the Kids Helpline, and you have your local police. Treaty 3 police were definitely at the table, and they've actually been able to get a human trafficking educator to go out to the Aboriginal First Nation communities within your area to educate what human trafficking is. So we cannot ignore this anymore. We all have to come together and speak out. And I'm going to continue to force the governments, both federally and provincially, to do something. And I just commend all the local groups that have come together, not only in Kenora, but other parts of Ontario, voluntarily to set up these roundtables and to try and combat this crime.
We're going to take another short break. When we come back, I would like you to imagine that a 16-year-old girl who was vulnerable to being trafficked, what you can say to her, where
Okay.
so she can stop from taking that step.
Yes.
Okay. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. I have Laurie Scott with me, who is an MPP from Central Ontario and very passionate about human trafficking and how it's affecting our young women. Just before we took a break, we were talking about if you are of the age 14, 15, 16, where you might be in a situation where you're being groomed, that you should do something. And I was thinking that at that age, you might not be talking to your parents that well, but there should be an adult somewhere that you can talk to, that you can trust. And it's really important to find that adult, because they might be able to find a way out where you feel there is no way out.
Absolutely. If there's some adult that you trust, maybe you've been to church, maybe you met a teacher, maybe it's a grandparent, maybe it's someone that you don't really know, but maybe there's a hotline you see, the Kids Helpline, for example, the Chrysalis hotline. You need to, maybe if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, just pick up the phone or go see, maybe even it's an older neighbor that you trust that's next door. You need to say, I don't know about this maybe older man, or they're wanting me to do something I'm not really comfortable in doing it. Maybe tell a story, because a lot of times you got to think, does that make sense that that person is offering this lifestyle? But I know him, and he works down at the fast food stand, but he thinks he's going to take me all over the world. Is that making any sense? And so I want to reassure the young people out there that you don't do anything you don't want to do. It is, if you don't feel comfortable, there are a lot of people, whether they're over the phone, whether it's the police, if you don't want to go to the police, whether it's, someone in your school, your teacher, that you can go to, because I want them to ask questions. We have to realize that we live a lot in the internet, and what we see in the internet can be very deceiving of what reality is. And so
it's a bit of a fantasy land.
It is a fantasy land, and you have to feel comfortable that there's a lot of good people out there, whether it's a kids helpline, as I said, or whether it's a Chrysalis hotline, that want to help.
I can also
understand.
see, and you'd mentioned when we were off air, that it is really a hostage situation, and you gave some very good examples why a young person would be very afraid to talk to someone else.
Yes. So you can this lifestyle that can be lured in, and maybe he's offering to buy you different clothes, and you have to wonder, the trips, the dinners, or maybe this person even wants to come over to the family for our supper, and it's very it looks all fine, but all of a sudden this person's asking you to do, just help me out for a while and help me make some money. And so you have to kind of think that this, as you said, it's a fairyland out there. Life is usually not that easy or that good. And, there are people that you can speak to. So maybe in the community here, is there groups that I'm missing, the community a little bit more, that you think that might...
Well, there's the Sexual Assault Center has a 24-hour
Right.
crisis line that you had visited. There are many agencies. There's after-school programs. There's sports programs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, and most young people are connected to something.
Yes. So if there's youth groups that they're involved with, there's sports groups that you're involved in. I think that if you're even walking by the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, or you're walking by, something in the downtown, there's always good people that are around that might be able to guide you, or to red flag the fact that maybe you look like someone that's in distress and needs a little extra help. You have some great church community groups also here that are becoming more and more aware of the vulnerable situation that young people can be placed in.
And there are more youth groups being developed too, which
Yes.
I think is really good.
Yes.
Yeah. Off air, we had talked about Dr. Joyce Foundation.
So Joyce Smith, if I can give a shout out, who was a pioneer in getting the federal government to recognize that this human trafficking of young people was so prevalent. And in every corner of Ontario, I hear a similar story. Everywhere across the country, there's a similar story. We worked together with the federal justice minister, Peter MacKay, and they brought in some human trafficking laws federally to recognize the fact that it's against the law to buy sex in Canada. Was a big part of that campaign. They're out to basically stop the buying of sex. They're not out to arrest the young people that have got caught up in it. No one's been arresting those people for many years. So Joyce Smith Foundation out of Manitoba, she's going national now. She goes and speaks everywhere she can to raise the awareness of human trafficking. She raises money to help young people get into the recovery and the rehabilitation that they do need. In Manitoba, we mentioned Diane Red Sky, who has many transitional houses and offers employment training for young people as they escape the human trafficking game that they're in. I just want to say human trafficking is against people's will. It's abuse. It's a human rights abuse, and it's usually with children.
And it's, like you said before, it's a hostage situation because
They
the
are
young
there
women
against them.
are terrified about leaving and being pursued by their trafficker.
So quite often they're starved, they're beaten, they're addicted to drugs, they're forced to do 15 to 16 tricks a night. This is occurring in hotels, and that's what usually happens. So the training of hotels and motel operators, security guards, the housekeeping staff. Someone comes in and buys a block of 10 rooms for 3 days, especially if it's around a sporting event, but just in general, that's a red flag. And those managers and operators of hotels need to phone the police. Because when you are having 16 men come in and out of a hotel to the same room every night, hello, that is a red flag that there is, illegal activity going on. And especially if you see young girls, they're usually terrified. They usually don't write their name without looking over their shoulder to see if the pimp is there and it's okay to do it.
Has there been any talk about programs for hotel
Absolutely,
staff?
that exists also. Actually, there's a UN declaration for hotels and motels and such associations to get training. And I know in the Greater Toronto area and in Toronto, the Toronto Police Services go in and train the staff in hotels. That can be replicated many times over. Different police officers and survivors themselves come and train police quite often. Most of the police that I've worked with in Southern Ontario were trained by survivors of what to look for, what to watch for, and how to handle a young girl. You don't go into the hotel room and say, are you here against your will, like cold? You have to warm it up. Are you okay? Is there anything we can do for you? Here's my card. If at any time, 24/7, you call me if you feel, you're not being treated right. They don't go in and open their purse and take their phone. You've closed down that whole possible relationship right away. So it is a relationship building over time with the confidence for these young girls to say, I'm here against my will. Someone save me. And it usually takes, a moment in time when they say, I'm not going to live in this situation. I'm going to die. This person is going to kill me or beat me to death. And they try to run away. And it's at that point they have to have the contact to get out, and they have to get out now. And in the States, there's teams that will go in and pose as, a John, and go into the hotel room and say, I'm not really here. We've got 20 minutes. Would you like to leave? I've got a van waiting in the back door.
So they go in to do rescues.
They go in to do rescues. So that's the interventions. Different forms of that are replicating. So yesterday we heard of a great program where the University of Alberta have a human trafficking program, and backpages.com is where most of these girls are advertised. And they'll take the phone number down and they will text it. We're here to help you if you want out. So there's great initiatives that are being developed in North America, but around the world, to try and intervene, to try to reach out to these, and these girls are they're being held hostage, they're enslaved. It is modern day slavery. That's what it is, and it's happening in Canada and in Ontario. Ontario was actually a hub for human trafficking. It was designated in a report that I did.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to stop you there. I think you could go on for
I'm sorry, I could.
No, you could go on for a long time. I really appreciate you coming in and talking about this. Your passion comes through, obviously, very strongly. So this has been Sitting with Sallie with Laurie Scott. If you are a young woman who's heard this and it resonates, please call someone. Please start that step. You don't necessarily have to do anything else, but at least call someone and start looking for support. And thank you for watching today.